we have what's called an equity agreement in our house. I studied organizational leadership for my undergrad. And one of the cool things I remember out of that was called the equity theory of leadership. So if one party's putting in a whole bunch and the other party's not, that scale gets off balance. What do you think happens, right? It's naturally, there's going to be some friction, some unhealthiness in the relationship. So I could over support him, and then he's going to feel pressured, and he's going to, maybe feel like he's got to do more than he really wants to do, right? I could under support him, and then he feels like, hey, come on, man, like I'm limited. I've got a glass ceiling and you're my glass ceiling. But on the other side of that, as a parent, if I'm over supporting him and he's underperforming, or we're out of whack there, that's where a lot of those disagreements at the finish line stem from. That's where a lot of those uncomfortable ride homes stem from, right? I don't want that. I don't want that in our household.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode. Let's dive in and talk about fun in BMX. I hear that you're the guy to talk to. David Christensen was the one that introduced us, but okay. Yeah, I would love to, get to know who you are, and we'll go from there. So Mike, who are you?
Yeah, so my name's Mike, 44 years old. Been riding bikes for a really long time now, and got to dabble in all sorts of different kind of bicycling, starting with BMX. Still ride bikes, still mess around on the dirt jumper, mountain bike. Heck, up until last year, I was still pretty active with BMX, riding with my son, Tyler. Really, it just got to the point to where I was going to have to push harder than I was comfortable pushing to stay with him anymore. And to be honest, I couldn't even out sprint him anymore, So yeah, we like to ride bikes. I work in the strength and conditioning field. So it's been really fun taking a lot of the things that I've learned along the way and kind of pairing that up with our BMX journey. And I think when people hear that, oh, he's a strength and conditioning coach, or hey, he was in the military, or triathlete, marathon runner guy, they probably have a much different concept than I think what it really unfolds to be. And so Dave has a long background in road biking, not the one with the pedal, the one with the throttle. He was quite accomplished himself, and we were on the same team together for years, and we just got to be good buddies and always tried to share information back and forth, whatnot. And the common denominator, right? If you want to be at the tip of the spear in your sport, you have to love what you're doing. If you don't love what you're doing, if you're not having fun, you're never going to come back often enough or for a long enough duration to ever really capitalize on that human potential. So I think that's where it really comes down to. And at the end of the day, you might have a great time in this sport. You have an opportunity to make money, but that's not a guarantee. You can always have fun in the sport. That's a matter of perspective and attitude.
Absolutely. And obviously there are countless people that have both had fun in the sport and been competitive and really enjoyed it and had a good time. And then there are, on the other hand, there are countless people that have suffered through it, they've been, very good and very competitive. So you've got all that. I mean, you can kind of think of it in quadrants, as you can have fun and be really good. You can have fun and be really bad. I mean, you can not have fun and be really good, or not have fun and be really bad. And so there's definitely that dynamic. And that's one of the things that I was excited to hear about with you, is that David said that you had spent a lot of time, or he talked to you often about what it looked like to have fun, and you helped him to keep fun into the sport. So will you give us a little bit of an idea of what does that look like within what you guys have done? How do you keep fun in
Yeah,
competitive sport?
absolutely. So we want to look through this through the lens of long-term athletic development. And when you look at that, what you find is kids who specialize in one sport early on, they often don't make it to the top of that sport. They usually don't even make it to the top of the collegiate level. They normally burn out somewhere around that middle school age. The athletes who make it into high school and beyond, they're usually multi-sport athletes to some extent, right? There's some outliers there, your Tiger Woods or some of these people that specialize really early, your Nick Long in this sport, who kind of specialized at one thing and they did well, they didn't burn out. But there's so many more stories about a kid who's maybe squeezed, pressured, maybe provided with even more support than the kid really wanted, and it made for unhealthy dynamics, and those kids burn out, or they're pushed too hard before their body's like biologically ready for that, and they develop a muscular imbalance or an overuse injury. There's a million factors there. So for us, I think we just kind of slow roll it, and we're like, hey, we know where we want to be in a long time from now, and let's backwards plan that a little bit, right? If you don't love the process, you're never going to get to where you told me you want to be as an athlete. And I certainly don't want to be a barrier to your path, your progress, right? I want to be somebody known to support you and help you along the way. So I think that's where we look at it, right? My kid's 14. This is the first season we've ever allowed him to semi-specialize in I wouldn't even say one thing. It's just this year he said, Dad, are you cool if I don't play baseball anymore? I really just want to focus on cycling. Now, when we say that, I could show you my garage. My wife loves this. We've got a 3-car garage, not a single car in it, right? We've got park bikes, we've got dirt jumpers, we've got road bikes, we've got several different mountain bikes, right? Because you need the cross country bike, you need the trail bike, you need the big mountain enduro bike. What my wife doesn't know is we're going to sell her beach cruiser and her road bike, and we're going to buy a downhill bike. So we have the whole gamut of bikes. Tyler, he races BMX, he goes to the dirt jumps, he loves going mountain biking. He competes at a very high level in mountain biking as well. So for us, it's more of like, all right, we gave you a really wide lane. We played the stick and ball sports. We did the bicycle stuff. We've done a lot of things, and we just keep kind of like slowly paring it back. Okay, now you're going to be a cyclist. What kind of cyclist are you going to be, right? And I can't tell you I have the answer for that. I ask him and he gives me an answer, and he goes, I'm going to do all of them. And I'm like, are we talking like the Michael Phelps of bicycling? And he's like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. So we'll see, we'll see. There's got to be a lot of things in alignment for that to happen. At the end of the day, if we know that we gave it our best swing, we did it in a healthy manner, we had fun as a family. My kids look back on this as something that taught them the path goal theory, something that taught them performance under pressure. We had equity in the relationship. Then we're good. If we get more out of it than that, then sick. Awesome. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, I love that perspective, because if we look at even the general life, if we are supposed to, people will argue this, but really you're supposed to figure out what you want to be when you grow up by the time you're 16, 17 years old. And, you know, you're supposed to figure that out. You're supposed to know what college you want to go to. You're supposed to know what you want to do in life. And the reality is you talk to most people who are 40, 50, 60 years old, and they say, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, or if I grow up. Right. And
I don't want to grow up. I
exactly.
don't
Who
want to
does?
grow up. I figured that out.
I actually saw a t-shirt the other day that said, when I grow up, I want to be a BMXer. And then the bottom of it, it was a picture of like a mom holding her young son. And then underneath it, it said, sorry, son, you can't do both.
Yeah.
And I love that. But really, we're supposed to have chosen. And in the same way, you're supposed
Says who
to,
though? I got to
well,
challenge that. Says who?
well, so I feel like just coming from having spent quite a bit of time working with teenagers and then my
Yeah,
time in
yeah.
high school and college. And so it's the them. There's not
The
really
society, right? Societal pressures, cultural norms,
exactly
expectations, right? Yeah.
those counselors, those, you know, those people who are supposed to guide and direct you, but there's so many more options than what's just presented. And
Yeah, some of those counselors, though, I've got to ask, like, tell me about your life experience, oh grand counselor. Right? You're
exactly.
back in the same high school system you just graduated from 5 years ago. Tell me about your grand life experience, right? I've been to other countries. I've done stuff like, right? You
Exactly.
can
Well,
learn a lot of things outside of school, and it could be a slow path. Man, I'm a month away from finishing my master's degree in kinesiology. I'm 44 years old.
that's
I wasn't
awesome.
planning on this, right? You can have the best plans in the world, and then life happens, right? So what are you gonna do
Yeah.
with
Well,
that?
and that's why I love what you've done is because even if society tries to push students in that direction, I think it's so important to still have a broad range. I mean, I remember talking to a teenager who was, you know, 15 years old, 16 years old, and I talked to teenagers now in the BMX space, but at this time this 15, 16-year-old kid, he had this dream of he's going to play in the NBA. And I said, "Okay, cool. What are you going to do if that doesn't work?" Well, it's going to work. Well,
Mm,
well, it didn't work. That didn't happen. But then there are so many people that try to, you know, effectively hone in on one activity. And what you've done as a parent is created this opportunity for, what bike do you want to use today? Let's go play. And
yeah, yeah.
not the expectation that that will turn into a career. If it did, cool. But ultimately, it's just there are so many choices. You've got, even in just you know, if you narrow it down to one subset of sports, bicycles, and then you have all the
Sure.
disciplines in there, is that there's still what, 8, 9, 10 different disciplines that you could
Yeah,
specialize
yeah.
in.
For sure, for sure. Or you can even branch into like triathlon, off-road triathlon. Like it's so here's the
Yeah.
deal, man. I study a lot. And if you give a person autonomy and then they have what's also called self-efficacy, right? I get to choose my path, and I think I'm not confident. I'm comfortable that the path I could choose, I can be successful at, right? You pair that up and you supply a person with resources, motivation, support, maybe some oversight, and cool things happen, man. Like, um, you know, and I want to go back just a second here. Like you're talking about people over specializing and a lot of this stuff, and I want to make an acknowledgement, man. When we first started in this sport, I could have very, very easily and most likely would have got caught up and carried away being a type A personality, you know, a pretty motivated dad, all these kinds of things. And some of like the information, my experiences, like I could have absolutely poured all that into my kid and just ruined our experience. We had Mike Redman as our not only our local track operator, but when I used to race as a little Grom in the 90s, like Mike was the guy. He was the team you wanted to ride for. You know, he showed up with the box van and the massive power, and all that. And then, full circle, we come back into the sport, and my little kid's wanting to ride, and Mike's our local track operator. And he pulled me aside like plenty of times and just poured like wisdom and information into us that I think allowed us to avoid a lot of the obstacles and pitfalls that parents get sucked into, right? He taught me the importance really early on with Tyler. Hey man, like, are you trying to buy number plates and jackets, or are you trying to get somewhere in this sport? Like, what do you want to do? And ultimately it was like, I want to have fun riding bikes with my kid as long as I possibly can. I want to make great memories, like, and I also don't want to I don't want to limit him. I don't want to hold him back. If he's got talent, then I want to invest in that. I want to nurture that. But, so I would say that he certainly holds a large place for us not burning out our kids, our finances, and maybe our marriage, because a lot of people get carried away on that stuff, and it could be easy to do.
That is incredible insight. I think first of all, having those conversations and those moments with Mike Redman is absolutely phenomenal. What a cool human, and so many memories and stories, and such a legacy left behind within the sport. And he, to be able to instill that into you, to be able to, even here publicly acknowledging the input and the insight and and really the direction that he has given to what you've been able to do for your son, and being able to help in that direction, and potentially even for you, is, like you said, burning out your family, your finances, your marriage. Like, that is next level, because most people that dive into something really heavily, it becomes all about their kid and what they're doing. And not only does it need to be fun for your son, not only does it need to be fun for any children involved, it also needs to be fun for the family. And instead of finding identity in that, because then at some point your child will move out of the house. So what happens then?
And maybe sooner than you wanted, if things aren't good there, right?
Exactly. And at that point, even if you are together, if you focused entirely on, okay, well, all we're going to do is race at the track, we're going to just invest into our child, we're going to help them get to that next level. Okay, well, now they don't go to that next level in the sport. And now it's like, okay, well, what do we have to talk about? What do we do? Do we do we still even like each other anymore?
Yeah. And one of the things that Mike really hit on is it's okay to just be okay. Like, there's families in a sport that they're never going to be the top NAD kid. They're never going to be winning rock. They're never probably going to make it into the main at Worlds. And that's okay. Like, their family has the resources, the kid has the desire, and they have the means to get to these races and have some great experiences. For them, it's more about like the experiences and the travel and the relationships and all of that stuff. That's rad. That's rad. Like, I take my hat off to those people.
Quick detour to one of our gold level sponsors, Luminex Neon, who has partnered with us to help accomplish the mission here at BMX Breakthrough. We're so grateful for their opportunity, and there's a special place, a near and dear place in my heart for neon, all things neon, whether that's on paper, whether it's shoes, whether it is a sign in a living room or a garage space, it doesn't matter. I love neon, always have, probably always will, and so neon signs create a unique statement piece. So if you're looking for that for your bike shop, for your garage, for your workspace, maybe it's for your living room, Luminex Neon offers exactly what you need. So with unparalleled craftsmanship and endless design possibilities, Luminex Neon is your go-to for brightening up any space. You can follow the link in the description and use our promo code BMX Breakthrough 10 in order to get 10% off of your order and to explore everything that Luminex Neon has to offer.
I would love to wave my flag and say I'm like that. I'm really not. Like, we have what's called an equity agreement in our house. I studied organizational leadership for my undergrad, and one of the cool things I remember out of that was called the equity theory of leadership. So if one party's putting in a whole bunch and the other party's not, that scale gets off balance. What do you think happens, right? It's naturally, there's going to be some friction, some unhealthiness in the relationship. So I could over support him, and then he's going to feel pressured, and he's going to, maybe feel like he's got to do more than he really wants to do, right? I could under support him, and then he feels like, hey, come on, man, like I'm limited. I've got a glass ceiling and you're my glass ceiling. But on the other side of that, as a parent, if I'm over supporting him and he's underperforming, or we're out of whack there, that's where a lot of those disagreements at the finish line stem from. That's where a lot of those uncomfortable ride homes stem from, right? I don't want that. I don't want that in our household. So we have agreements. We just say, hey, man, you tell me what races you want to go to, and then I'll look at like logistically what it's going to take to get us there, and then we'll agree on a preparation plan. You follow that preparation plan, and we'll go to the race. And there's no jam ups on race weekend about your performance. Like, none of these kids come to not perform, to not do their best. Usually when they have a moment where they fumble or they make a mistake, it's because of excessive outside pressure. Where do you think that comes from? Right? The competition's enough. They don't need to hear it from us as parents. We need to be that umbrella. We need to be that refuge they could come to. Not all sugar and hugs and cotton candy and like, unicorn smoke. Like, we need to be honest, but we need to do that in love. We don't need to be the harshest thing about a BMX weekend, where a lot of times that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked before and said that I encourage people not to take, especially young kids. I've got a 6 and a 7. And so I encourage people not to take their kids to the bigger races, nationals and even state races. Because if they're not pushing to go, then you get to a point where you're spending the money on this event, and naturally, whether you have the funds or you don't, because some people are operating with cash, some people are operating with a credit card. And so regardless where that money's coming from, it is, and how much of it there is, there's always the natural pressure of like, well, we did drive all this way. We did spend all this money. We are investing into this. Okay. And now you're not wanting to ride. Now you're not pushing.
Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that?
Whose fault is that?
That's where the adult has to step up and take some responsibility. Like,
but who gets the blame? Here. But who gets the blame for it is the problem.
All too often it's the kid. And that's sad. And that is exactly the equity theory that I'm talking to you about, right? We got to create a healthy space in these relationships to where these kids, they can open up and they can talk to you, and they know that you're there to support them and not use them like a remote control car to get your, whatever your thing is you're trying to get out of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that it's great for the kids, because I've had conversations with parents too who go, oh, my kid really wants to go to Grands. My kid, and it was like leading up to Grands this last year. And I raced at Grands for my first time this last year. And then the year before that, I went, and I was coming to Oklahoma anyway. And so I had a chance to just go and visit and walk around. And it was cool. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a crazy environment. It's really neat to be a part of. But what I told people was, okay, your child's only been racing for a couple of years. Yes, they may want to go, but they're still at an age where they don't understand it's going to cost you a minimum of $3,000 to go. And, depending on how many kids you have racing, how many days you want to stay, extra, whatever, all that. So I said, make sure that they are at an age where they understand and appreciate, make them work for it, make them. And I loved what you said. We'll put a preparation plan in place. If you do what you're supposed to do, if you hold up your end of the deal, yeah, I'll fund the money. And like, it's not going to be a problem. If I say we can go, yeah, then absolutely. And I know that based on what you've done A, B, and C, that you're going to work as hard as you can once we get there. And even if you don't succeed, even if you get last place in your motos and you had a good time, it's okay. You did everything you needed to do.
Yeah. So you talked about paying cash versus paying credit, right? That's the exact analogy I give is, hey man, we're paying for this BMX trip upfront cash. You put in the work up front, I put in the money up front, right? And we're all good. We get there on the race weekend and something happens, you're human. You're allowed to make a mistake. I'm 44 years old. I make mistakes, right? Like we're allowed to make a mistake. Now, we're not allowed to like throw fits about our mistakes. We're not allowed to blame our mistakes on other things. Like we're going to take accountability. We're going to take some responsibility, right? My 3 rules for my kids and the athletes we work with is number 1, have fun. Number 2, try your best. Number 3, have a good attitude regardless of results. Like we can work on everything else under that. If we can't get those things right, those 3 things, like nothing else is going to go well for us. So we got to start from that. That's our platform.
Yeah, that's good. That is, I like that. I like that conversation. And even your acknowledgement of you're going to put in the money up front. The kid is going to put in the work up front, and same on a credit card basis. Okay. If the kid goes, oh yeah, I really want to go. I didn't do what I was supposed to. I didn't train very hard, but I'll train when we get back from this race. Well, that doesn't
We've
work.
made that mistake. We've made that mistake. We've showed up where I knew he wasn't prepared. I spent the money and it didn't go well. Like he didn't perform, or actually he performed right where I thought he would, much lower than he thought he was going to. It was a wake-up call. I didn't handle every one of those perfectly. When the light bulb finally came on is when I just said, buddy, look, I understand he was 1 win shy of having whatever he needed for, I think it was 8 scores back then. He was 1 win shy and he was supposed to go to Houston, Texas, and he had not been training. And I just said, bud, I'm sorry, man. Like I've been telling you, I've been explaining it to you. I've been as gentle as I can. Like I'm canceling the trip effective today. And at first, like there's some emotions, right? He got choked up. He didn't like throw a fit. He didn't cop attitude, but he got choked up and is like, dude, like that was my full rack going into Grands, the last national of the year. This is what I needed for NAG 1. I'm like, dude, you haven't been putting in the work. I've done this. Like I know the potential of this. Like we could get lucky, but I'm not spending this amount of money to get lucky. Like, come on, man. And I think when that happened, that changed the dynamics. He was like, all right, dad ain't playing. He's here to support me. He's not being a jerk, but he's not going to play kid games to put bicycles on airplanes, stay in hotel rooms and rent cars to go race bicycles. Like we're not doing that. And he showed up to Grands that year and just crushed it. I think he won 11, 12 open and 11X at Grands, at Race of Champions. He crushed it at Grands. He came from lane 8 and almost got the whole shot with Eli being in lane 1. They've always been great competitors. Tyler was like sliding his bike into the last turn, trying to make it stick. And I think he wound up 2nd behind Eli, maybe 3rd. Lucas Deriba from Brazil might have got in there. I'd have to look back, but that was the most fired up that kid ever rode because he knew if I don't get it together, I'm not going to Grands and I want to be at Grands.
That is a good story. So what did that do?
Yeah.
So obviously you just spoke to the results that it gained. What did you see in him that changed after that trip got canceled and in preparation for that next trip?
Yeah. So, you know, for him, like, he knows that I won't overwork him. I believe in minimal effective dose, and you incrementally adjust through like healthy workload management, healthy progression, right? Like we really do probably about half of what I think other people that we compete with do in an overall like weekly workload. So for him, it was just, well, I want to be at this race. What he's asking of me is not unreasonable. Um, okay, well, I'm just gonna do it. And he leaned into the program, and he was like, oh wow, you know, and it was cool. And so what he learned is like the path goal theory, right? Like, so if I have a goal, I just have to backward plan the path there, but there has to be like some legitimate path. There has to be some progression. Like we have to like have a roadmap of some extent. And that's where I come into play, right? Like I've been studying this stuff as a professional since like 2001 is when I first became a personal trainer. You know, I was an athlete long before that, but I started like looking at it through a different lens in 2001 and just fascinated by it, man. Fascinated. So love to study.
That's great. Well, okay, so then you spoke to racing with Redmond. You spoke to being an athlete before you got into being a personal trainer. So your history in BMX, will you speak a little bit to how you got involved in the sport?
Shoot. I'll be honest, man. Like it's just what the kids in the neighborhood were doing when I was probably 11 years old or so. Um, yeah, so I was out riding with the kids at the fields. I wanted a race bike. You know, our situation at that time didn't really create the opportunity for it. I started working at like folding pizza boxes at this pizza place. I saved up the money for my summer's worth of work. I bought a used PK Ripper off a dude named Darren Craig from my neighborhood. Um, Local bike shop, like, you know, I'd come in there with my money and buy some parts or whatnot, and they helped me out. So I put a race bike together, and I would literally like ride from my crappy neighborhood to the local BMX track, Metro BMX there in Bakersfield.
That's
So yeah, I'd
awesome.
ride there and started racing, and you know, I did it for probably like 5 years. I ended up like getting some sponsorship help and getting to go to some nationals and whatnot. And for me, it was cool. It was just is a great eye-opening experience. It was something really fun, like positive memories in my life. And then from there, yeah, got into like motocross and mountain bikes and high school sports and shoot, joined the military, did like triathlons, marathons, some of that stuff, and then got older and circled back, had Kylie and Tyler, my two kids, and wound up what were we doing? I had some like opportunity to buy like a Redline Micro Mini and the matching uh Pro XL Cruiser. It was like my 35th birthday or something like that. I'm like, I'm doing it. It's my birthday. So that's where Tyler and I kind of like jumped back into this, and he didn't want to race. We just rode and played around for probably 3 or 4 years. And then he saw some big old trophy that the Rockstar Redmond State Race trophy. It's probably like 6 foot tall, and it has Rockstar cans all over. This thing is huge. He saw that trophy being built at the local track on a practice run. He's like, I want to race. I want to win that. And that was it. Like that was 7 years old. Like a couple weeks before state finals, he had his mind made up. He was going to win that trophy, and he did. And then we're off to a national, and then another national, and like then he's expert, and like, yeah,
That's
it's been a wild
awesome.
ride. Been a wild ride, but a fun one.
That's really cool. It's fun to hear your story too of how you got bikes, because my first real bike outside of or my first brand name bike was because I don't want to discount the fact that, you know, department store bikes can still get still get kids riding. Um,
Sure.
but that's how I started. But my first brand name bike was a Redline RL 180, and I would have been, I think, 7 years old and 6 years old, and my dad bought the semi-matching Redline PL 24,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I remember this. I have this vivid memory of going to the bike shop. It's called Tim's Bike Shop. On the way, it was in Everett, Washington. On the way down to what at the time was McCollum Park BMX, now is Bigfoot BMX, and now we were just going for a gate practice. We had gone a couple times before, and he stopped and bought us a couple of bikes, and we
Yeah.
got to race. So it's fun
Well,
hearing your story of you getting those two bikes, because that's exactly my memory. And so did
yeah,
you,
it's been fun.
so you just raced for was it, would you say, like just a couple of years then growing
Yeah,
up?
probably like 5 years as a kid. And then
Okay.
like when he got back into it, like I was racing, I think 3640 cruiser at the time. There's one
Okay.
national where we actually we both won together. He
Whoa.
tripled up. He won, I think, 8 BMX all or 8 expert all 3 days. I think I only won one day, but there's like one day where we both like won. It was pretty cool. It was a sweet memory.
That's really
And then
cool.
yeah, like I kept riding and staying pretty active really up until about like the last year or two. Life just got super busy. Some things came up. Went back to school, and we've actually been talking with him being 14 years old right now, but 15 for the UCI class, and next year wanting to like branch out and do more of the UCI stuff. We are the same exact height right now. And I want another bike. So if you fly overseas to these events, kind of the expectation is you show up to World Cup with two identical bikes ready to rock. So I might need another bike, just to like help support and develop him is what we tell the
Absolutely.
wife.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what we
yeah.
tell the wife, and this is, a business expense. So, it's not like we're levying it against the taxes.
Yeah,
So
exactly. No, I mean
yeah,
it.
it's a responsible thing to do.
I think it'd be irresponsible not to. I mean,
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
got to support your son, right?
You know,
That's pretty fun.
yeah. So I'll probably be sending an email here in the next month or so and ordering a second bike because he wants to start racing some of the big hill supercross stuff this year, next year, and then yeah, try to get on that World Cup scene. Jeff Upshaw and we've been working on some cool project stuff for next year. Jeff's a great friend of ours, great resource. I developed a great relationship with him about a year and a half ago. I do some consulting for him on the strength and conditioning end of things. And through that, like we've just had a bunch of conversations. We see a pretty huge gap in the sport for the kids like Tyler who want to be that future junior elite, the kids like Wyatt that want to be that future junior elite. How do they bridge that gap, right? There's no system in place there. So we want to put together some week-long camps where if a kid's met a certain benchmark, he's eligible to race Supercross Elite. He's serious about it, or she's serious about it, right? Because there's some gnarly chicks out there right now, where these kids have an opportunity, right? They can meet us. We have a big hill facility set up for a week. I'm wrapping up my degree in integrative wellness and kinesiology. We will eat like the food you need to be eating. The strength and conditioning program will be on point. The recovery work will be on point. If you want technical input, I'm going to be honest, Jeff's not only like one of the best at giving technical input, but the way he does it is so well received where I'd be able to support him on some of that with some video overlay and really get a pour into these kids. So I think that's gonna be fun. We're gonna try to get a few of those set up for next year.
That's really cool. Love hearing about that.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
will you speak to a little bit of One Life? Because I'm newly familiar with a little bit of what you've done, but I
sure.
would love to dive into what you do.
Yeah, so One Life Health and Fitness, dude, you only get one life, right? So what are you gonna do with it? Some people get us misconfused and think we're like no life fitness. Look, we're not scared to have a beer, but we want to do more than just that. We want to get out and experience life and be present for the moment and enjoy all that there is out there. Everybody's path's going to look a little bit different. We're good with that. So we look at things through what we call lifestyle medicine lens. We want to look at like good nutrition. From the studies, it looks like plant predominant whole foods diet with clean protein sources. We want to look at physical activity, right? Does your physical activity program meet the goals of what you're trying to accomplish? Is it realistic? Right? How are we looking with that bounce? Sleep. Are you getting quality of restorative sleep? A lot of people aren't. A lot of people aren't. So there's a lot of things you can do in terms of sleep hygiene. That's part of the equation there. What are your relationships like? Social relationships. When I work with athletes, I talk about their sphere of influence. Who's in that sphere? Do they belong there? Right? It could be a peer, but is your peer somebody who's like constantly trying to chip away at your mental fortitude? Always looking for a chink in your armor? Is it somebody who's there to like legitimately build you up and support you and maybe have your back when you're not in the room? Like that type of person, right? So we need to look at that whole sphere of influence. Is it a coach who's there because you make their resume look good? Or is it a coach who genuinely like cares about your long-term development, your well-being? A coach, is it a coach who wants you for a team sheet or a team manager? Like you're on this team because they just want to milk you for 2 years for a team sheet until you just burn out and never want to come back to the sport, right? So who's in your sphere of influence? How are we going to manage those things? Is it the parent who just trash talks you before you get into the gate, and you're more worried about the wrath of that tongue when you get to the finish line than you are the other 7 people lining up in the gate with you? That's a reality. Then we got to look at some of these athletes like risky substances. Whether it's tobacco, whether it's alcohol, cannabis is becoming more prevalent these days. Like how are those things and how are they interfering with your athletic performance, your professional performance? Even sugar or caffeine, right? All those things can be risky. So we just want to cast some light there, some acknowledgement there. So we're just trying to hit on those 6 different pillars of health and wellness and see what we can do to kind of shore those up and get the message out there to people. Like there's a lot of people who look really good with their aesthetics, but they're hurting inside, or their body's metabolically not healthy, inflammation, mental health issues. Who knows what's going on, right? Heart attacks. Like there's just so many preventable diseases we could do things with. I really like working with the tactical professionals with the health and wellness side for them. And then I like athletes. I really love my cyclists, primarily like downhill, enduro, dual slalom, BMX. There's great science and literature out there for cross-country mountain biking, pretty much anything on the road. They're doing a great job there, right? So where I see the most opportunity to make an impact is more of like the sprint sports, the gravity sports. There's some huge gaps in literature there where that's where I can lean in and fill that, right? And then my wife, she handles the community fitness. We live in a pretty tight knit community. She runs community fitness classes and has her stuff going on. So it's just a slowly evolving family business where she does her thing, I do mine, and there's place and development for the kids to grow up with us as well in this.
That is really cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
So really, I mean, One Life, it almost, I mean, it sounds like it's a very holistic approach to health and fitness.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
talking about that dynamic, and like you said, there are so many things that that play into performance. And I mean, stress weighs in heavily on our sleep, and our sleep affects our performance and
Yeah.
all those things. So as you were
Yeah,
going
you're
through and
talking about the allostatic stress load.
I didn't even know that word. I,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no,
Allostatic stress load. It talks about like the biochemical, the relational from the psychology component of things, any inflammation from your diet, right? All these things compounded. Sometimes it's not a 1+1+1. Sometimes it's a synergistic effect. So some of these stressors compound and they multiply. And everybody's got those different things. They all have different values associated with them. So yeah,
yeah.
people like they look at it and they're like, oh, that 1%. I'm like, dude, what's 1% to you might be 10% to somebody else, and vice versa. So you could go down any rabbit hole way too far. I think the biggest thing is find what you can do, what you're willing to do, and challenge yourself a little bit.
Yeah. I remember being at a national, and we were there on a Saturday. And just because you spoke to the value of relationships and that negative voice, you know, if it's that parent or whatever. And Saturday, I was working at a booth, and right in front of me, this kid stops, comes across the line, stops in front of the booth, and mom comes over and absolutely ecstatic and way to go. And she's screaming, and he's probably 11, 12 years old. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, like he looks very like shy and like, mom, you're embarrassing me. You're starting to get to that age. And she's just over the moon excited. And almost 24 hours later, obviously Sunday runs a little bit earlier, but almost 24 hours later, Sunday, he comes across the line. She comes over, exact same spot. What is wrong with you? You had that. You could have. And oh man, and just laid into this kid. And I mean, he was probably, he had probably been, you know, he was probably pretty hardened by it from it. And so I don't think he cried,
Yeah.
but he was getting choked up. And I just thought, man, my thing that I've gone to is he's gonna grow up. He's gonna hate you. He's gonna hate his bike. He's gonna hate racing. Um, but every time he gets on the gate, is he's got in the back of his mind, like you're talking about, either in the back of his mind, he's thinking she's either gonna be really excited and it's gonna be embarrassing, or she's gonna be really mad and it's gonna be embarrassing.
Yeah, self-management, right? How do you expect your kid to be present and focused when you can't manage yourself like that? And I'm going to be honest, like I haven't always done it well. I've had to learn, I've had to learn. Fortunately for me, I think I was able to learn quick and spot some things in other people around me and make some changes before, before I think it got to, any of those big moments. But I can remember one time my my son's stomach was it was knotted up. He was like pale before a race. And it was wild because he had just turned expert like a month before. He made his nationals at Vegas, just turned 8, just turned expert. And we had talked like, hey man, if you can make a national main by the end of year, like that'd be pretty cool. This kid, he shows up and makes his first national mains, first national as an expert. And I'm like, oh dang, now we're on to something. So then he starts talking like, oh, I want to be on a factory team and this and that. And one of the local companies had already like talked to me, and they're like, hey man, we want to get him on the factory team, and we see some promise here, some prospect. And I was like, oh cool. So I had the hook in the mouth and was putting pressure on him to perform well because I know he was being scouted, or so I thought. And yeah, as soon as we got there, like they offered him like, hey man, like here's the factory gear. We want you on the team. He didn't want to go to that race. He felt so much pressure to go to that race, and he didn't even know what was waiting there. But his whole season goal was like basically fulfilled by his second race of the season. But me over supporting him and putting pressure there that didn't need to be there, like it showed up physiologically. Like the kid was pale. He couldn't hold down food. He was nervous. He was making more mistakes than I'd ever seen him make. And like we had a good, healthy relationship to where we talked back and forth and we were pretty open. And he didn't know, but I was able to like discuss with him and unravel, like he felt a ton of pressure from me because all the preparation, all the support, all the criticism, which it was shaped as constructive criticism, but it was out of whack. It was too much criticism in that period of time, right? So that chipped away his self-efficacy and this and that. And the kid shows up, he's 8 years old, he doesn't understand these emotions. And like, I should have been a lot smarter. Like I was a guy from the military, from the fire service. I should know these things better, but I didn't. It wasn't until like that moment, I'm like, oh crap, I'm the problem.
Mhm.
And then we got to unwind things really, really quick. Like, hey, bud, we got to have some conversations. I'm just going to scoop up a big old spot of humble pie right here. And we'll wash this down with whatever, but I'm going to eat this humble pie. I'm going to explain some things to you, and we're going to pivot here, and we're going to make things better. And that was at 8 years old. And yeah, I think from there, things have been significantly better. And we've been able to have a lot of conversations where he kind of leans into this project as well, because he sees it, he sees his buddies and kids that he races against and other kids just getting lit up. And we talk, we want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem here.
That's good. Well, yeah, and the reality is that kids, they usually don't have the words for it, but you were talking about putting too much pressure on him, and it wasn't intentional pressure. It wasn't intentionally trying to
It's from a
cause
good
that.
place.
Yeah, exactly. And the kids don't normally have the words for it, but really what they need is for mom and dad to go, "Hey, I love you. I'm proud of you. Way to go."
Have
And
you heard there's a YouTube video on this. I love to watch you play. Elite level soccer coach. He decides it would be a good idea to coach his daughter's like little soccer thing. And he learned some very, very important lessons from there. And he leaned into this project called I Love to Watch You Play. They've got a website. They're on YouTube. There's some pretty cool things that have came out of that. Any of the parents that I work with, that's kind of what our pre-screeners is. I talk to them about like, hey, here's what equity looks like. Here's what's the long-term athletic development program look like. You got to watch this video and let's make sure we're a good fit for each other. Because if you can't lean to like these things, I'm just not the guy for you. And I want you to have that experience with the person that you think is for you. And maybe we'll cross paths again. And usually we do.
that's cool. That sounds like a phenomenal video. I'm gonna have to look that up, and
Yeah, I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link through email.
That'd be great. Yeah, and then actually I'll link it below, so anybody listening, I'll link that video below so that you can go and find that as well, because I think that things
Sure.
like that are so valuable for people to see, because like you said, it's just that innate desire. Kids don't have the words for it, but they need support. They need you more than they need anything else. They need your love and your care, and they need you
Yeah.
to be an encouraging voice in their ear.
An environment that they can flourish, right?
Absolutely.
Not every plant needs full sun and like, heavy water, right?
Yeah.
All plants are grown for different environments, different things. So if BMX is a space for your kid, then we know the nutrients, we know the plan, but right, not every plant is meant to grow here.
Yeah. And to what you talked about at the beginning, that's why there are different bikes, because just because BMX racing isn't the place doesn't mean that BMX bikes aren't the place, and that doesn't mean that mountain bikes or road bikes, or it doesn't matter.
Sure.
Because there can be other bikes. And one of the things that I say a lot, and people who the listeners will know exactly that I say this time and time again, is that my goal is that my kids would love to ride their bike in 20, 30 years. That long term, they don't have to be racing, but
Yeah.
long term, I want them to love being outside and playing and being able to play with their kids and just enjoying the fresh air. And that's more valuable to me.
My long-term goal out of this is I want to go riding with my children's children. And I want my children to speak of the fond memories we had riding bikes together. And I want it to be genuine, right? I want that to be something passed down. So you talk about BMX being a pathway, right? Jeremy McGrath, we know where he got his roots. Christian Craig, another motocross guy who got his roots in BMX. Aaron Gwynn, World Cup champion, mountain bike, downhill world champion. Like, he got his roots also in BMX. Christopher Blevins, mountain bike cross country guy, BMX. There's a lot of really, really high level people that got their start in BMX and have taken it into other disciplines. So yeah, he wants to be a cyclist. We're in the right place, and we'll figure out slowly as we go from here.
That's cool. Well, I appreciate your insight, because I think this is really helpful and really valuable for probably a lot of people, myself included in that, is that the way that you have laid out the way that your program, for lack of a better term, is focused on having fun. That's amazing, because I think that it's really easy to say, oh, we have fun riding our bikes, but to put strategic action steps to that and ways to accomplish that. So I love the way that you've laid that out, and the focus that you've been able to implement into, no, it's okay, let's go ride other bikes today. It doesn't matter.
Let's build on that for a little bit here. So you're talking about, like, how do we make that look? And I've got some great examples, I think. So number one is we try to figure out either a 1 or 2 peak seasons a year. So this year was his first year ever racing Worlds. So Worlds and Grands, 2 peak season. So he really only needs to be polished and really top-notch shape twice this entire year. That's it. We backwards planned for there. He showed up in Rock Hill. He's a December birthday, racing a class older. He crushed it. He followed the prep plan. He earned his trip there. He had no pressure from me. The pressure was, I want that darn world plate. And he put in the work. He wound up World 4. It wasn't the circumstances he wanted to do it under, but he did it. Like, he crushed it. His laps were darn near flawless, right? So from that, like, we're going to chill out. We're going to back out of it for a month or so. We're going to take some downtime. Then we'll go through like a general prep. We'll go through a specific prep. And then we're going to come into our racing scene later on. We try not to do more than 1 national a month. We try to do like a 3-week progressive build. So whatever race we went to, what did we see was our biggest opportunity to build upon from that race? Okay, let's incorporate this into our 3-week progressive training block. Let's go in roughly a month. Let's retest. Let's see if this is moving us closer to what that goal is, whatever that goal may be, right? And then we do that for like maybe 3 or 4 months, where we just keep moving the chess pieces forward to that big event. And then we unload for like a month. Now there's all those, that's kind of like the bigger pieces. That's the macro cycle, right? We got 2 macro cycles in a year if we're doing it that year. A lot of years we've only done 1 peak a year. You're going to go play baseball, you're going to do soccer, you're going to do whatever. That's your general prep or your time off. You got 4 or 5 months of that. And then we're going to do like roughly 5 to 6 months where we build into this season. General prep, specific prep, early competition, right? Then we're going to try to we're going to find our peak, we're going to mark it, and we're going to show up there and we're going to kick the door in. Now, how do you keep a young kid on a pretty targeted program? You don't. You have to be creative, right? I know that as a strength and conditioning specialist, I want him working on short acceleration, right? Like your 0 to like 30 foot is the characteristic I'm trying to build today. And I want him to go out and I want him to do 12 to 16 sprints off the sprint block, 30 foot with timers. I want him switching feet every time. That's what I want. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. Hey, Dad, all my buddies we live on a little private lake out here. So, hey, Dad, all my buddies are down at the lake. They're all hanging out. I know we've got sprints to do today. Can I knock out my sprints real quick and then go hang out with my buddies? Absolutely not. Tyler, I want you to grab your skimboard and get on the golf cart. Pack a cooler full of water, grab some snacks, go hang out with your buddies, right? He would rush the workout and do the workout because he knows that's the expectation. The workout would be crap. It would be rushed. It would be sloppy. It would not be focused. I send him out there on a skimboard. What do you think he's doing? He's doing probably 100 sprints. He's doing them with the healthy break in between. He's not only doing the sprints, but now he's working on bounce, coordination, proprioception. Same fuel system I wanted him to develop, that ATP/PC, the phosphagen creatine system, works for like 10 seconds or less. That's your first straight power, right? That's what I want him to develop. He's doing it, but he's not in this teeny tiny little box, right? He still gets to be a kid, like a month. Now there's all those, that's kind of like the bigger pieces. That's the macro cycle, right? We got 2 macro cycles in a year if we're doing it that year. A lot of years we've only done 1 peak a year. You're going to go play baseball, you're going to do soccer, you're going to do whatever. That's your general prep or your time off. You got 4 or 5 months of that. And then we're going to do like roughly 5 to 6 months where we build into this season. General prep, specific prep, early competition, right? Then we're going to try to we're going to find our peak, we're going to mark it, and we're going to show up there and we're going to kick the door in. Now, how do you keep a young kid on a pretty targeted program? You don't. You have to be creative, right? I know that as a strength and conditioning specialist, I want him working on short acceleration, right? Like your 0 to like 30 foot is the characteristic I'm trying to build today. And I want him to go out and I want him to do 12 to 16 sprints off the sprint block, 30 foot with timers. I want him switching feet every time. That's what I want. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. Hey, Dad, all my buddies we live on a little private lake out here. So, hey, Dad, all my buddies are down at the lake. They're all hanging out. I know we've got sprints to do today. Can I knock out my sprints real quick and then go hang out with my buddies? Absolutely not. Tyler, I want you to grab your skimboard and get on the golf cart. Pack a cooler full of water, grab some snacks, go hang out with your buddies, right? He would rush the workout and do the workout because he knows that's the expectation. The workout would be crap. It would be rushed. It would be sloppy. It would not be focused. I send him out there on a skimboard. What do you think he's doing? He's doing probably 100 sprints. He's doing them with the healthy break in between. He's not only doing the sprints, but now he's working on bounce, coordination, proprioception. Same fuel system I wanted him to develop, that ATP/PC, the phosphagen creatine system, works for like 10 seconds or less. That's your first straight power, right? That's what I want him to develop. He's doing it, but he's not in this teeny tiny little box, right? He still gets to be a kid.
And you
right?
didn't make him hate the training and hate BMX because, well, Dad says that I have to do this, and to make Dad proud, I got to go out and I got to do my sprints, and I want to go to the lake, but I'm doing these sprints because this is what Dad said to do, and I want to go on this trip because I have to put in the work, so I'm going to prove to him that I can do it, and I love that.
How long's that strict program going to last? Until your kid hits puberty, gets a voice for themselves, and tells them, like, we're not doing this anymore, right? It's got to go past that. We've got to be smarter.
And there are absolutely
how many.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, well, I was just going to say, and there are absolutely times when you may go, no, like, we're 2 weeks away. I need you to work on this. But for the most part, being able to say that, yeah, it just makes it more fun.
So I would say that we probably, for most part of the year, and exactly like you said, for most part of the year, we probably have some tweak or some adjustment to most workouts that I want him to do. I've got I use Training Peaks. I kind of map everything out, but I map it out in broader categories. Here's the attributes I'm trying to develop. And me being a strength and conditioning coach, I'm like, cool, there's a million different tools we can use. Like, to be honest, when we get out of here, we're going to go wakeboarding. I want him to work on some isometric work. I want him to work on some reactive strength work, some core stability. So he's going to do some sprints, and then we're going to get out on the wakeboard boat, and we're going to patch in the rest of the attributes I want done. He doesn't want to do pull-ups, right? But I put a 300-something horsepower boat in front of him. I tell him to hang on to a rope and pull yourself up on this wakeboard. How many pull-ups do you think that kid did? A lot, right? A lot.
But it was disguised as a good time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hey, man, the amount of times we've sent him to the trampoline park with his buddies and skipped a fantastically designed plyometric program, right?
Yep.
I think like we want to keep them going in the right direction and not keep them in a lane, right? This is a 4, 5, 6 lane freeway, kid. Get busy. Just keep moving forward. Like it's you're not on one lane yet. So giving them some autonomy, some choices, some ownership, some buy-in, that works.
And at the end of the day, he's outside. He's breathing fresh air. He's playing in the water. I mean, the water in and of itself, getting yourself positioned, getting up onto a surfboard, getting up onto the wakeboard, hanging on to an inner tube, like they all require different muscles. And it's not just because a boat's pulling you doesn't mean it's effortless work. I mean, it would be like saying that just like riding motorcycles. Well, it has an engine, so you don't have to work very hard. It's just so, you know, sending him out onto the boat to go play in the water with his friends. It's not like he's skipping a workout. It's different. It looks different.
We've repackaged the workout, right? I want the same fuel systems. I want the same movement patterns. And there's certain attributes as far as like how fast those muscle fibers are contracting, how much force they're contracting with, right? You could like, we can go off into velocity-based testing and all this other stuff on another conversation, but I know what speed I want those muscle fibers firing off at. I know what fuel systems I want to work at. Like, how can I package this to where we're not fighting? We're working together. We're getting what we want to need. We're moving in that direction of, like, he tells me he wants to be a junior elite racing Supercross. He wants to do some World Cup level races in Supercross. He also wants to do some enduro and some downhill mountain bike racing, right? So that's his direction. My direction, I want to like be supportive. I want to have positive memories. I want him to look back when he's got kids of his own and talk about the love, the support, the encouragement, the resources, right? I want him to recount those things, and I want it to be meant.
At this moment, I'm going to interrupt our episode, our current interview, briefly to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsors that have backed us financially in this project, in our mission, and give them a huge thank you. So at our gold level, we have Luminex Neon and Marketing Breakthrough. At our silver level, we have Sound Cedar Lumber and Bicycle Thieves. And at our bronze level, we have Pro Start Gates and Justin Shepard, Title Examiner. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for backing us. If you are looking for help with any project that you're working on, if you're looking for some cool things to do, go ahead and check out the links to their websites in our description and go ahead and visit them, show them some love. We are so appreciative for their support. And if you are interested in getting involved in a local track, helping out, or sponsoring a local track, sponsoring the BMX Breakthrough project as a whole, please reach out at j@bmxbreakthrough.com. You can also go to our website and find out some of the needs of tracks and some of the things that we are working on at bmxbreakthrough.com. Once again, thank you so much for your support. Let's dive back into this conversation.
Man, that creates a whole nother level of intentionality. And so even, I mean, I felt like before you gave some tangible action items for ways to make that fun and to make, but I mean, what you did was just create some tangible ways to make the training side of things fun. And so I think for people listening to this and saying, we want to train, we want to focus on racing. Well, I mean, these are great steps. You can still encourage your kid without burning them out, without making it a stressful thing, without making it in some ways, without making it a taxing thing. And
Yeah. So
so
any of the athletes that we work with, we pretty much like, hey, look, you can have 1 6-month progressive ramp up, or you can have 2 4-month progressive ramp ups. If I map out a training program for you for a year, there will be 2 months off. It's got to be. It's got to be. Replenish your bank account, if nothing else, right?
yeah,
Do some things you want to do as a family. And it's
yeah.
so easy to get hooked onto USA BMX's schedule and their birthdays and this, that, and the other. Like, you could
Well,
do it, but what's your bigger goal?
and it's
What's the
just
bigger
like,
goal?
it's like anything. I've run marathons. I've competed in different disciplines of things. And when I talked about running a marathon, I had this idea, and I was like, oh, that would be really cool to run a marathon a month, and but do them all in different states. And it was kind of just a conversation in passing, and I don't know that I actually want to do that, but anyway, but I made this comment, and my wife goes, yeah, but it's all the training leading up to a marathon, and then for the couple days after that you're recovering. And it's true. It was, and I think I knew that before I even mentioned it. And but it was just kind of this idea. And then the reality, though, is that if I'm that dedicated to it, I become in some ways a much more distant dad and husband. And
Yeah.
the amount of training for anything, and I love what you just talked about, is allow yourself peak seasons, because you need time to recover, or maybe your family needs time to recover from
Yeah,
you being gone.
rejuvenate.
And
Yep.
working hard, training, keeping your body fit and healthy, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, you've also made a commitment to your family to be there for them, and to disregard them in order to go and put yourself first also is unhealthy. And so I like that peak season idea.
Track and field is probably the easiest sport to study and the longest lasting like case studies from athletic development. And you look at the literature there and you look at everything that's applied, man, they have 2 peaks a season. They have an indoor season, they have an outdoor season, right? That's it. And if you look at like what their weekly volume looks like, it's not a lot of weekly volume. And I think BMX athletes need to realize they are a sprinter. They're not a middle distance runner. They're not an endurance athlete. They talk about endurance, but it's in fact not endurance. It's what's called lactate resistance. When you operate in the anaerobic fuel system, the byproduct of glycogen broken down quickly without oxygen is lactate. Lactate accumulates with hydrogen. It changes the pH. It interrupts with the actin and the myosin bounding at binding sites at the filament level. That is the burning sensation. That is the slowing down sensation. That is where muscle pump comes from. It is not an endurance issue. It is a lactate resistance issue. And that is trained completely different than you would develop this middle distance endurance that these people talk about. Completely different pathway, right? So yeah, I don't know, man. We need to get better at sharing the information and get this stuff out here.
Yeah, that's good. This has been so helpful. I'm encouraged by
My
this.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Man, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your attention to detail, your intentionality when it comes to your kids and your athletes, and just being able to help people have fun and find fun within.
Hey, and like, dude, we've got plenty of free stuff available on not only our Instagram, we've got a YouTube. Jeff Upshaw and I have done some like collaborations. We're just talking back and forth. We did something together for the Worlds. I think he said he wanted to get on and do another one about like managing a calendar season. with those peaks that we talked about. So we're going to keep working together and dropping stuff like that out there for free. Like, honestly, we want to make the sport better. So whatever I can give out for free, we'll do that through Instagram or that YouTube page. And then I even want to make some like really low cost stuff available, some templates and stuff like that, so we can get more people working on the same program. And unfortunately, to do like high level programming and coaching, it just takes a lot of time. So I'm limited as to what I could do there. But everything that we can find ways to give out for free or make very like cost efficient, we'll do that. We really want to make the sport better. We want to make families better. I really want to see US get back on the top of this thing. You know, BMX started here. We should be the international like dominators of this sport. So
that would be awesome. Well, what's the best way if people are looking for some of that information and content that you've created? Instagram, YouTube, your website.
Go to my Instagram. On my Instagram, if you go to the bio, there's a link tree there where we've got a website, we've got a YouTube, we've got Facebook. I'm on Training Peaks. If you're looking for like specific training programs, I'm on Train Heroic for the resistance-based training stuff. Yeah, we're pretty easy. The website is weak. It's not really built out yet. I finished my master's degree in about 3 weeks from now. And then I'll have time to like really start building in and developing more of this stuff and get more involved from there.
Perfect. What is your Instagram? I'll link it below, but what is it?
One Life Health Fit.
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm excited. Thank you so much for just for sharing that, for the access to those tools and materials. And absolutely, it's exciting to see the sport continue growing. And next time I'm out that way, I'll have to get a hold of you.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to come visit Tulsa for the Legacy Nationals. Tyler's going to get out there on the Supercross hill. So maybe we'll bump into you out there.
Well, yeah, let me know when you'll be here, because unfortunately that weekend I'm going out to the Frogtown Classic in Angels Camp.
Yeah. Very familiar with that.
So I'll be out west while you're in the middle of the country.
Okay.
But
my grandpa used to go to that frog jumping contest up there in Angels Camp. He was a professional boxer here in California, and they gave him a city to the key up there. Or sorry,
really?
A key to the city. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. That's really cool, because I've heard about the frog jumping of Calaveras County, but didn't know. I've never actually talked to anybody who has been a part of it or known somebody that's been a part of it.
Yeah, it's like the Mark Twain era up there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really cool. There's some really fun stuff, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's
we've camped out there before. It's cool.
That's
area.
Cool.
Awesome.
Right on. Well, Mike, it's been so much fun talking to you. Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate the insights, and thank you for your investment into our sport.
Yeah, cool. Have a good one.
Right on. You too. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.